Good morning. You're listening to the Blaine's World Show, heard here on WPVM LP 103.7 in Asheville, North Carolina, every Wednesday at 9 a.m. And we're also on WPVM's Facebook page. So if you're watching us, welcome aboard. I'd like to say hello to my three guests this first half of the show. Before we begin, guys, you can wave to all your fans and friends in Facebook world. Okay, so if anybody's watching, they can see you in Facebook world. I should mention that my three guests are going to be talking about an upcoming production they're involved in, and they'll be at the Dinah Wortham Theater, and we'll talk about the date in just a second. But the guests, I guess in no particular order, are Fred Northup, and Fred in my lower right-hand corner there, and he's joined by Drew Banzhoff, and Drew is in the bottom left-hand corner, and that's Mike Gow in the upper left-hand corner, one way to look at it. And I'm Blaine Greenfield. I'm the host of the show, and I'm here in my lovely studio in downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And I guess everybody's at their respective studios. I should mention, just in terms of backgrounds, Fred had a career as an Episcopal minister for 25 years, including congregations in Memphis, Tennessee, Paris, France, New York City, Lake Charles, LA. He's the the dean or head minister at St. Mark's Cathedral in Seattle. He founded Athletes for a Better World, a national nonprofit organization, in 1998. He's now retired, even though writing this play, I don't think would qualify you as being retired. Plus, he plays several instruments. He's sung in choirs, groups all his life. Currently in Land of the Sky Barbershop Choir, of course, great group, the Asheville Choral Society, and the Choir of All Souls Cathedral. Drew Banzhoff is the music director and composer of David, The Face of Love, which he has co-created with the writer-lyricist Fred Northup. Drew is a very active composer, conductor, and musician, has performed with and directed numerous groups throughout the state of North Carolina and around the country. Drew currently attends the University of North Carolina School of the Arts and is studying music composition. Lastly, Mike Gow is a good friend of mine who has been on the show several times in the past. He's, I like how he says he works for various theatrical companies that will hire him. Good answer, Mike. From the Center for the Arts and Inspiration to the Magnetic Theater and all things beyond and in between. I also work part-time as an event host in the Conundrum downtown. Are they still open? Oh, yeah, I was going to say, we'll edit that out.
Right next to the Pinball Museum.
Okay, right next to the Pinball Museum. And Mike also is an author, and if time we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Anyway, guys, I'm very excited about this because this is a show I know very little about, and I'm looking forward to seeing it later in just about a week or so. But Fred, I guess you wrote this play, is that correct?
Right.
And was this the first play you ever wrote?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the only play I've ever written.
Okay. Well, how'd you get the idea to write it?
Well, as you mentioned, I am a priest in the Episcopal Church, and so when I was in seminary, you learn. Everybody knows a little bit about David, that he killed Goliath and that he had an affair with Bathsheba. People know some things like that, but the fact is that he was the greatest king in the history of Israel, and his name is revered in the Jewish tradition, and in the New Testament. They wanted to make sure everybody knew that Jesus was a descendant of David. And so here you have this guy that was obviously a musician and a poet and a great leader, but also he was an adulterer and a murderer, and he had a lot of challenging relationships, let's put it that way. And so it was rather interesting to me that this very flawed guy is the one who is so admired. I mean, Jerusalem is the city of David. So what was up with that?
So how did you get the idea to write the play?
Well, just on that, I thought I don't know why I decided to write a play. I don't recommend it, by the way. Do not ever write a play. Do not ever write a musical. You're writing a billion songs and it's all or nothing, It's not, you want to be a songwriter, write them one at a time.
How long did it take you to write it?
Well, I wrote it about 40 years ago the first time, and we sort of did a production of it back then, but it was not any good. And so, I mean, some of it was great, some of it wasn't, but I wasn't successful, let's put it that way. And so it bugged me that I was not successful. And so over the years, I kept wanting to fix it. So as you say, when I retired, I've been retired about 10, well, really only 3 years, but I was sort of, anyway, I've been working on it for about 10 years, to answer your question, off and on, and trying to get it right, and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. And so that's where we are.
Now, the challenge too was that, as you mentioned, you wrote all the songs to this as well. Is that correct?
Well, I wrote not all of them. I wrote a lot of the melodies.
Right.
But Drew has done all of the arranging and has taken the melodies and embellished them, sometimes changed them, but it's his music that you're hearing. I mean, you can give me credit for the tunes if you like them, but it's really Drew's amazing music.
And Drew, let's talk a little bit about how you got brought into this process. So, how long have you been involved in the play?
So we are going on about 3 years that I've known Fred, at least in terms of the story about how I met him was interesting. So I was still in high school at the time. I was a junior in high school singing in choir, and my choir director at the time happened to know Fred. I can't remember was she directing whatever group you were in that was with
barbershop. Yeah.
But yeah, the men's barbershop. And so she got in contact with me because I had been writing some pieces for them off and on here or there. And she said, so I know this guy named Fred who's written a musical, and he needs a composer to kind of reel it all in and pull it together. And so I was like, nah, why not? Musical theater is not my normal area that I specialize in. I'm a classically trained musician, so like I'm always out there writing classical music. So this was definitely a stretch for me, but I think it's been a wonderful experience, and it's been great to work with Fred over these past couple of years to try to figure out here, there, kind of here's what he wants and how I have to realize the vision that he wants to bring it to life. And so it's been a great adventure.
So same thing too.
I was realizing it has been 3 years, because of COVID, we lost a year.
Right.
Yep.
Well, were you working during COVID at all on this?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So is this, Drew, the first time you've ever done a play of this type?
A play in this sense, yes. This is the first true musical that I've written for musical theater or anything in that similar genre type.
Okay. So do you think you'll do some more in the future?
If anybody will hire me to do it, I'll do it again. So yeah.
And we'll introduce Mike in a second. But knowing Mike, you will be called on, I'm sure, in the future, because Mike knows like everybody.
Already have some ideas.
Yeah, he does. And Mike knows everybody in every local theater. So look for getting some other gigs through Mike. And Mike, then the same thing too. I wondered how you got involved in this. So, I hear Fred and Drew, but then how they find you and how you get involved.
So I've been involved a lot less than 3 years. So I didn't know Drew or Fred until Fred was been like 2 months. Not even
long.
7 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 months. Maybe 3 months. I don't know.
Maybe 2.5 to 3. So I was hired by Fred through a contact, Katie Swinney, which is a mutual contact, a friend that Fred and I know. So I didn't really know Fred before that. So we talked on the phone. We kept missing each other. There was a big phone tag issue for a while, and then we finally emailed. So anyway, he basically hired me to direct a musical. And as you know, Blaine, I'm typically more of a performer than a director, but I have been wanting to get more into direction. And I read his work and was very impressed with the depth of it and the music that Drew had composed, and Fred had already had some of the melodies down, and the book seemed really cool as well. I thought that kind of stitched it all together. It's a pretty long show, but like we say in musical theater, there's really no such thing as a long show, as long as it's good, as long as it grabs the audience and makes it seems like it's not as long as it may actually be. But anyway, long story short, just fairly recently. But
what's really funny about that is that he says Katie Sweeney. Well, that's the same person. Do you know that, Mike? That's the same person that got me Drew.
Oh no, I didn't know that connection.
Yeah, no, she's the one that's put the whole thing together.
So Katie is the glue in this whole
promotion.
What was cool about this, Fred, because when I saw Mike's name on this, all of a sudden, I know Mike through his acting, and I've seen Mike must have been in at least 10, 15 plays. And so I'm looking for Mike to be in this play. And then I saw all of a sudden say he's directing it. I said, whoa, that was quite interesting. But I think this is a guy, I mean, he does, as you'll probably saying, he does musical, he does music, he does comedy, he does drama. He's quite a talented guy. And so, Mike, is this the first thing you've ever directed?
No, not the first. I mean, Fred's right here, so I don't want to say that it is. No, it's actually not. So I did direct some children's stuff down in Atlanta, a couple of adult things, but this is probably the first like full musical. I directed like Frozen Junior down in Atlanta before anyone else had the rights to, and some other stuff. But yeah, this is pretty unusual, as Drew had mentioned, and Fred as well. This is I wouldn't, not unusual in the fact that, oh my God, it's just completely outworlded, but it is a fairly, it's kind of opera meets classical. You could tell Drew's training is in classical, like he'd mentioned. But I think that's good because, like Fred says, David is such an operatic character. And he's such a real character because he's this broken guy who managed to do all these incredible things.
Now, do you think this will lead to more directing for you in the future?
I think so. I think I kind of like, I think I still like performing maybe slightly better, but I think, the more I direct, I think I'll probably like it.
Because I'll have to ask you down the road, because one of the things, Drew, I always ask a director, and Fred as well, they prefer acting or directing. And almost all folks might tell me they prefer directing. I think just because they don't have to memorize the material, so a lot seem to go in that direction. But talk, Mike, about one other aspect of this, I guess, where you came in. So did you cast this you got the cast together?
Yeah, I did most of the casting. Now, obviously, as a director, I was mostly in charge, but I went through Drew and Fred a lot. We were all kind of at the casting table, even though it was really kind of came down to me. They especially when I cast Karen, because I was kind of like it was like a close call between someone else, and I'm like, you guys, here's what I think, but you guys decide, so it doesn't look like because she's in the show as well. So yeah, and it's a good, if you want me to speak on the cast very quickly,
just shout out some of the people in it. Sure.
Matthew Edwardson is our David, so he's amazing.
Great choice for that. Wow.
Yeah, Madison Garris is Bathsheba. Great voice, a maturing voice as she's getting older. Her voice was always good, but it's now even more like full and like Eleanor Martin, and who I'd never worked with before. She's our Mikal, I think is the Hebrew pronunciation. Who else? Casey Edwards we discovered. He has this gorgeous voice. It's amazing. Sounds like a Disney prince. And then Karen, my wife.
And Leaf.
Who else, guys? Yeah, Leaf. Leaf Broderson is our Epsilon. He's amazing. I have time to name
let me ask,
Solomon.
who?
Matthew Harper as
Sure.
Solomon.
Right, Matthew Hart and Dylan Giles as well.
Oh wow. Well,
And
They're
a
incredible
role.
singers. They're incredible singers. You just come there and sit down and just listen to them sing, and it's worth it. Forget the play, forget anything else, just hearing them sing.
well, it's interesting, Fred, that Mike said, which is great. All you were involved in it seems like the selection of the cast. Was that tough? Also, I always wonder, having to go through people, and then I guess not. I assume some people didn't get in the play. Is that what happened? Is that a tough thing to do to kind of not take people in?
Are you asking me or
anyone who would grab it?
I think they all, well, from my viewpoint, it's the first time I've done it. It was easier for us to make the choices than I would have thought it would have been. You could sort of tell the voice seemed to go with the part, but all of them have these people that audition. They're used to being turned down,
Right.
And but it's and we told them they were auditioning either for the play or for the chorus, and so. All the ones who were really good either got a lead or they got in the chorus, pretty much, I think.
Yeah, we only turned away maybe 5 people.
Yeah, not that many, and some people dropped out.
Yeah.
But anyway, but we're good now. And Mike gets a lot of credit. Mike, I didn't realize that the extent of your contacts, my Lord, because that's been huge for us. Blaine, because he's brought in some people that he recruited. He did some recruiting as well. Let's put it that way.
Bring some ringers in.
Well, it's
some ringers. Yeah.
As you point out, Mike, like I said, has been so many local plays. But the incredible thing about him, he's been in like almost every theater, so every one he knows, from being in the theater, 10 people in every local theater. So that's really cool. Talk about the process then, guys, of the rehearsal. So we open up next week, or just unfortunately it's just a one night thing. Is that correct?
Yeah, we couldn't get 2 nights. The Wortham was, and so we decided to go ahead and do it now because it schedules best, and we're going to get a good audio and recording and everything. We hope that having done this one time, we'll have a video and an audio. We hope that other people will want to do it, and we may do it again too.
So talk about the rehearsal process. So we're opening up next week, but you've been rehearsing this, I guess, for a month or so, or how long have you been rehearsing?
We've had the read through. We've had one rehearsal.
Just one rehearsal so far.
So we start sort of full rehearsals September 13th at All Souls, which Fred has a connection there for us.
Okay. So then after that, how long will it be in rehearsal? How many nights will it be?
Just have 6 remaining. So, and to be clear, Blaine, this is a concert style.
Right.
So performers will be on book.
Okay. So that makes it a lot easier for them.
Yeah, but the music is pretty challenging. But amazing. So those 6 rehearsals we will definitely be needing, even though it's concert style.
Okay. And imagine, like I said, so how long is the show, Drew, from start to finish? About?
So the last time we timed it, it's between 2.5 and 3 hours is tentatively the performance runtime. I'm gonna have to go back and do my usual composition thing where I go back and time all the elements of the score and the dialogue and to get a more accurate reading, but that's the ballpark that it will fall in, is 2.5 to 3 hours without intermission. So
and there'll be an intermission?
yes.
At least one. Yeah.
It's going to be a long show. One of the amazing things you guys told me off the air is this is something so atypical to a lot of shows that Mike is familiar with, that we're all going to recorded tracks. So to see a live orchestra, I'm really excited. How many folks do you have performing with you?
Orchestra, there's 14.
14.
Mhm.
Wow, that's I don't know about you, but I love a live orchestra as opposed to the canned orchestra. So you have a 14 group people. Now, will they be with you at all the rehearsals too?
Most of the later ones, so not most of them, but they only need 2 rehearsals to pull all this together. So they'll just be 2 very long nights of just pulling together 3 hours of music, which is going to be.
Now, have you
They
ever?
can totally do it. I've personally hired the entire orchestra and selected people that are capable of doing this. So
I was going to ask you, have you ever directed this many people?
a couple times I have, yes, in performances, but never for this duration of time. So this is definitely a new experience. And this is also some of the more complicated music I've written in my time. So it requires a new level of rehearsral preparation from both myself and from the performers involved. So
now this was pretty exciting for you because this is the first time, again, for a show or a whole show, you've written the music for anything of this length.
Not necessarily of this length. I have written orchestra pieces that go many, many, many more hours in. I think at the longest piece I've written averages about 5.5 hours in terms of the amount of, it's for a huge orchestra, nothing compared to this. 14 looks tiny compared to this piece, but it's
was that one performed? The one
no, not yet. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's
because I don't know if I want
resources for that. That's a challenge to do that. So
I don't know if I want Fred or Mike to hear this, but kind of as I get older, I like shorter and smaller. So to have a 3-hour show and it's at night. What time start? What time?
7.
Okay.
We're starting early for that reason.
Well, I was going to say thank you.
And I was glad to learn that they don't serve beverages. So we're going to have one intermission,
right?
And then we're going to have another intermission that's not where you just kind of stand up and stretch and sit back down. So I think I'd be surprised if it really lasts more than 2.5 hours, and that's short for an opera. You got to think.
Say, sure.
Think opera, man. Or think football game. Don't think Broadway with 80 minutes and you're out of there.
Well, Fred,
we're giving everybody their money's worth.
Especially modern Broadway. Yeah, sometimes they're just one act and you're done in like 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Fred,
I think the full running time will be 3 with the intermissions, or maybe 250, 255. But that's
you and your rehearsal. Check Diana Wortham, because again, I was very impressed, and we'll talk about this too. that for COVID, to get into the theater, I was there just the other day, you had to show your card, actually show an ID card. And then they said, just what you were saying before, that you can't drink beverages. And because they want everybody masked the whole time in the audience. Is that the plan, do you think, when your show is on? Have they
Yeah, I
told you
assume
that?
so. It's their policy, not mine. It's theirs.
Right.
Okay. But I
We
think
want
it's,
people to be safe. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's good policy. And then they also, and we'll talk about this in terms of the crowd, they wanted you to be socially distanced, so how many seats have they told you?
Well, no,
you have?
we can fill it up if we can. They're
Okay.
they're not limiting us that way.
Great. Okay, and let's talk a little bit about then if folks do want to see it. First of all, again, the date of it is when?
The 28th.
Okay, and that's
It's this coming Tuesday.
okay, that's a Tuesday night. Okay, so people have to get used to that. And starts at what time? 7:00?
7:00.
Okay, and best way if folks want to get tickets, how do they get tickets?
Just go to worthamarts.org, the
Okay.
Wortham Theater website, and then you can, it sends you there so you can get them.
Okay, so now talking the remaining time, a little bit about what people are going to see. So it's, as Mike said, it's a concert, I guess, Mike, it's a concert version of a show, you would call it?
Yeah, it's a concert version of what will hopefully eventually be a fully staged musical, and I'm looking forward to that a lot because I'm also a stage combat choreographer, and there's like
Right,
this
that's-
cool battle
oh, it-
scene at the end. And
Oh, so I was going to ask you, so we're not going to see any battle scenes in this production when we come to
I mean, none that we're planning.
Okay,
But
Mike, because you've been into so many different kinds of shows and whatnot, could you see this as you're directing it? You see it as a full-blown show?
oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I've Fred's got some good stage directions already there, giving anyone who directs it a really good hint about the underscoring of the emotion and whatever scenes need to be taking place. And Drew's done a good job literally underscoring those emotions with music. So yeah, I think it's ready. And this concert style thing, I hate to say it's a workshop because it's an actual show, but it will help workshop a fully staged version, I believe.
And so there'll be, Fred, what happens is, so there are 6 actors, they're telling the story and acting the story, and then the chorus is kind of adding to it. Is that what happens?
Yeah, well, what happens is that there'll be, 3 or 4 or 5 microphones, whatever, across the center, across the front of the stage. And so the actor if, whatever 2 actors are engaged in a conversation, they come to a microphone and they have their dialogue. And then somebody sings, they stay there, go somewhere else to another microphone. You get the choruses all behind them, and they come in on almost all of the songs. So it's like a musical that way, where the chorus plays a big role in the whole thing.
It's very exciting too that you chose Diana Wortham. How'd you come up with that theater for it?
Well, we did it because in the first place, it's the only theater really that's got a good orchestra pit, even though they're not really a pit, but it's set up that way. And because they're so, it's the best theater for recording and doing any kind of both audio and video. So
I can see, Mike, can you imagine this instead of being at Magnetic or at Exalt or something,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
we have more people on stage, and you're right, Fred, to get all those people on stage is going to be, Diana Wortham, you can do it, but not too many other theaters could you do it. So did you have to get that far in advance, or you were able to lock into it fairly easily?
Well, it's hard to, I thought that I would be right out of the chute with COVID. That's why I didn't hire Mike until recently, because we couldn't do it. And then but it's amazing. If you look at their schedule, they're doing stuff, Diana Wortham. So yes, the answer is yes, it's hard to do it. We couldn't get 2 nights in a row. And so that met with everybody else's schedule. So I will say one thing for those that are listening: we want them to come to the show, but if they can live stream it, if they go to the Wortham site, you can it's cheaper to buy a ticket to the live stream than to the theater. So, but we want you in the house.
Okay, no, I'm glad you mentioned that. So,
but if it is sold out, we hope we sell it out. And so if it's sold out, you can still see it online.
I mentioned that's good to know, because I have a blog. I'll put it in the blog as well and put it on Facebook, so people can live stream it, which is great. Let me ask you, Fred, will they have the opportunity afterward to see it, and get a ticket?
Definitely. I don't know when or how, but we will, because we're recording it, we will certainly have some sort of pay-per-view available.
Okay, please, yeah, because a lot of shows do that, and some people can't get there that night. They may want to see it a week later or something. That's absolutely great. Also, it's kind of interesting. So you're filming this from the get-go. So you have a whole filming tech crew to do that.
Yeah, well, the Wortham Theater is all set up for it.
Mhm.
You just have to hire the people to run it, but the cameras are there and everything. It's all set up.
Yeah, we get to use a couple of their tech people.
Oh, that's really cool
Part,
then.
part
Too.
of the deal. Yeah.
Name of the play is called The Faces of Love. How'd you come up with that title for the play?
Well, I was trying to think of a subtitle, and so I thought, what is this about? And it's about the relationships that David has, and those are the different faces of love. The relationships that he has. You have in all of our lives, we have relationships with people who are our best friends. We have relationships with our parents or with our children if we are parents. We have professional relationships, all kinds of relationships, and the choices that we make in those relationships are the things we say or the things we do or don't say or don't do. The choices we make lead to the deepening those relationships and often tragically into breaking them. So whether it's passion or friendship, we all know the struggles of relationships. So this is the faces of love that David experiences.
That's a perfect segue to ask Mike a question, having to do the faces of love. And how is it, Mike, directing your wife in a play? And
she doesn't listen to me. No, I'm kidding. No, she's no, it's fine. It's actually interesting. We've only had the one rehearsal, so I don't really. We'll see. See if she listens to me. No, she's a professional, as you know, so she'll.
Have you ever directed her in a play?
No, I don't think I have actually.
Because you once gave me an interesting answer, and correct me if I remember it, but it had to do with the fact that you do lines with Karen. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you said you don't typically. Is that correct?
We seldom run lines together. It's we have our own different methodologies of like prep for roles and stuff. It's very interesting. Like she does the whole recording stuff. Listen, I'm very old school. I just go over the script a million times, maybe not a million, maybe 13 times, or I walk on a mountain trail with a script and let nature kind of make it sink into my head.
As I said, one nice things in this, and it's concert type version, so people don't have to memorize the stuff per se.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, we want, obviously the rehearsals will to have everyone get familiar with it. You still want to be familiar with the role and you want to hit all the beats with the character and stuff. But yeah, you're right. There's no memorization.
And Drew, the question to you, the question to you also is in terms of working with musicians, how long do they need to look at music and work and play it, before they're ready to perform it?
Much of that is up to the individual performer and the amount of training they've had over their career. So, I mean, we have a very diverse range of performers involved too. We have some people who are in the chorus who are younger, who have not had a lot of training, to full all the way professionals who can take a day or two to look over the music and they'll be ready to go. Whereas we have some younger singers who have to take more time, and some instrumentalists in the orchestra too that are college students who are going to be professionals in the coming years, but they will take more time to learn the music. But on average, it usually takes about anywhere from a week or two to about a month if you're on the lower end of that, just with less experience, I should say.
Is that tough for you, directing people older than you?
That's fascinating. That's a fascinating question. So I don't really look at it in terms of age when I'm like directing people. I look at it as I've hired you to do this job, and then you're here, and so there's just kind of a mutual understanding of that you're trusting me to be your leader here, and then I'm trusting you to help me bring my creation to life. So it's I don't really feel like I'm in charge so much. It's more like there's just this mutual connection between the conductor and all the people involved working together for this common goal.
Sounds cool. Fred, to recap everything one more time, the date of the performance and where and how to get tickets.
It's Tuesday, the 28th of the month, which is, I guess, less than a week from now. And you may get your tickets at the Diana Wortham Theater. And the website for that is Wortham, one word, worthamarts.org. And then once you go there, you events, you go to you see you'll find it once you get there. And if you just scroll down to get tickets, and it'll give you an opportunity to get a ticket in the theater if there is one, or if not, live stream.
Okay, I want to thank all three of you for being my guests this first half hour on the Blaine's World Show. I also want to say I'm really looking forward to this because it sounds like something hasn't been in the Asheville area. So that's really kind of cool that to see this production. And I don't think I've ever seen a production, Mike. And again, I've seen everything you've been in, but never anything quite this large. You know, maybe sometimes at ACT with kids, but for a professional, show.
This is an epic show. It really is. It's big.
I was going to say, and your first attempt, I give you a lot of credit for Fred, but I'll see you hopefully in on the 28th. And thanks, guys, for being on board. Speak to you soon, Mike. And
thanks, Blaine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so I want to have you all disappear. You can disappear on your own. I'm going to bring in my other guests. So
bye,
see
guys.
if this works out well. Drew, good meeting you. Okay. And
Thanks,
there we go.
Blaine.
And Mike, see you soon, buddy.
Thank you.
Okay. And as our next guest makes his way in, Zoom so perfect timing, I'd like to remind folks that WPVM's mission is to foster community through programming that cultivates dialogue to inform and entertain. The station provides a music meeting for artists, businesses, community leaders, and nonprofits to share their voice on live radio. Listeners are invited to help support WPVM's efforts by making a tax-deductible contribution, and you can do so by going to the website wpvmfm.org and click donate option in the upper right-hand side. This is absolutely perfect, TC. So thanks for being with us the second half of the show. And my guest is TC DiBella. And TC, you can wave to all your fans and friends in Facebook world. So if you're watching, TC DiBella is owner president of Asheville Pinball Museum, and he grew up in Eastern North Carolina and became a public school teacher, taught mostly middle school for 22 years, with the last 15 being here in Asheville Anchor Middle School. Married for over 20 years, he has twin boys who just graduated from AC Reynolds High School. And the question I always am curious about, TC, when I meet somebody for the first time, even though I think I met you at the Pinball Museum, but this first time on the show, did you when you were a little kid growing up, did you always know you wanted to run and own your own pinball museum?
Oh, no, that was not a consideration at all. It never even crossed my mind. I mean, maybe as a little kid, I thought it was just a neat place to be. The town I grew up in was 2,000 people, 2 traffic lights. My mother actually was a policewoman, and you're talking like 1975. So this is way before, that was a common thing. She actually worked the crosswalk when I went to school. I was very fortunate. I went to a K-12 school from 3rd grade until I graduated. But anyway, in this itty bitty town we had a main street that was named Main Street, and it had 2 arcades in this little bitty town. And one was called The Arcade, and the other was like Joe's Place or something. And Joe's Place was where the adults hung out, and they had pinball and pool tables, and it was a real dive. But the other place was very kid friendly, and so I enjoyed it. I always mention I'm the perfect age. I came along when I was a kid. There was only pinball, and then when I got to right about middle school is when the video games started showing up.
So as a kid, you played pinball a lot?
I wouldn't say a lot, but we would. My best friend, Derek, and I. This is how old I am. We would go around and pick up Coke bottles and soda bottles, right, and turn them in for change. And you had a limit. You could bring in, and it's the 70s, so people were just throwing things into the ditch, all the time. And so you could just walk up and down, and we'd ride our bikes around and find these bottles and go, and we would play pinball together. He was left-handed, and he would play the left flipper, I would play the right flipper. And we were really good. We could sit there and win free games over and over and over again. I remember one day he was really mad at me, or I got mad at him about something he said. And when the ball got to my flipper, he was like, we were having a conversation. And when the ball got to my flipper, I just let it go and I walked out of the store and rode my bike home. And yeah.
How much did it cost to play pinball then? Do you remember?
It was a quarter. Yeah.
A quarter.
There were still some machines I remember set to dimes. But for the most part, it was a quarter. There was a machine. It's the neat thing. You probably remember too, there were pinball machines everywhere. Every convenience store had a pinball machine. You would go to a gas station, they would have a pinball machine over in the corner. They were all over the place. So, but I do remember a few that were still a dime.
Now, anyone who's watching this is going to be envious, and listeners will just describe it, but you're not at the museum right now. You're in your, what is it, basement or house?
Yeah, I'm in the basement of my house.
And describe it again for the people who can only listen to this. What's in the basement of your house? So cool.
My basement's I've had this idea kind of for my basement since I was a kid, but not the pinball machines. I never thought I would own a pinball machine. And that is how the whole museum started. But right now in the basement behind me, I've got 4 machines. And 3 of them are my original 3 before I even got the idea for the pinball museum. Like a lot of people of my generation, the pitch and bat, where the ball comes out, you hit the ball, and those little runners run around the base. I've got one of those behind me. It's from 1962, and everything's working. But that's because I have one of my best friends is the technician and part owner of Asheville Pinball Museum, and if anything ever breaks, I just give him a call.
Well, your boys also must have been very popular growing up, because I remember as a kid I had a ping pong table. That wasn't anything compared to 3 pinball machines.
Well, it's a generational thing. They have friends over. My basement is if you've been to the Pinball Museum, a lot of people comment on our decor all the time. And my basement is that on steroids. There's not an inch that isn't covered with something: movie posters, sports pennants, memorabilia, and it's just a fun. My boys refer to it as the Fungin. I just call it the basement. But they've had friends over here since probably 5th grade. We'd have a little movie party. We have a little. Before television screens got big, I actually had a projector over in the one side so people could watch movies.
But what a great place to grow up in, I would imagine.
Yeah, they've enjoyed it, but they rarely play pinball. They might turn on. I've got a couple of old video games. They might turn those on, but yeah, for the most part, they don't understand all the. They just think it's hitting the ball around, and they've been around it since they were. When I started, they were in 5th grade. So
now let's talk about the museum itself. So you told me off the air now you've been in business 8 years, is it? The Asheville Pinball Museum. How did you get the idea to start a museum?
Like most good ideas, it wasn't my idea. I had bought a pinball machine for my birthday. My wife let me buy a pinball machine. It's this one right here, this Buccaneer, for $400 from a local business. And we started up a friendship, and then I said, well, if I find another machine, could you fix it for me? And he's like, sure. So I bought the Captain Fantastic that's right over here. And then I had a party here at the house, and which with being a school teacher's favorite weekend is the weekend before Christmas break. Or Thanksgiving break,
Right.
actually, and spring break, because you got some time away to relax. And so we would always have a movie party. And we were going to watch Raising Arizona for the first time. Some of these people had been coming to my basement for a decade, and they saw the 2 pinball machines, and they were like, "Whoa, you've got pinball machines!" And one of my guests sent me a link the next day to the Seattle Pinball Museum. And I was like, oh, cool, that's really neat. And I just was like, oh my gosh, if that was in Asheville. And I just took the next step and said, well, I know a guy that can fix them, and I know what should be there. So there we go.
Did you ever go out to Seattle to see it?
I have not been. I've actually had 2, one of my employees went out there, he was in high school and was taking a summer trip. And then one of my best friends from teaching, he's been out there. And we actually are officially sister museums of each other because they were the one that I got in contact with, talked with the owners, and was like, hey, you know, how do you do it? Why not quarters? Why a flat rate instead? And they said, well, this and this and this. And so, and there you go. Yeah.
And for the benefit of the folks who don't know the museum, it's something you should definitely get to. Describe it if you will. So it's where it is, and then describe when they walk into the place what happens.
Well, it is a museum. That's kind of a sore spot with me when people go, well, it's just an arcade, and I'm like, well, you can't play these games. You know, you're not going to see a 1975 Evel Knievel machine just out in public. And we've got that, and the Happy Days 8-ball machine, and Star Trek with Captain Kirk, and all that. But the front room's all pinball, usually 35 to 40 pinball machines, depending on the COVID situation. And then in the back two rooms, and a lot of people don't realize because of the name, we have all the classic video games as well. So we have Space Invaders and Frogger and Centipede. And so when you come in, you just pay a flat rate, it's $15, and then you don't need quarters or tokens. You just walk up and hit start and enjoy. And we make sure that there are fewer patrons inside than games to play. So there's and a lot of people play together. So there's always games to play. And we serve drinks. We have beer and water and soda and some chips and whatnot. But I always work the front door when we open. I go outside and talk to whoever's outside. And in the summer, we'll have 50, 60 people standing outside before we even open. And I'll tell them what the deal is. And what's really fun is I'm standing at the door kind of to keep the air conditioning in and making sure they don't just stand there because they will with the door open. And as people walk in, you hear over and over again, wow, wow, because I'm pretty good at presentation, and I've made sure that the games are exactly as they should be. The lighting's right. It's, you know, I don't have the fluorescent lights go off before people come in. We have lamps everywhere that are focused down on the machines. And then, like I said, the memorabilia, people will comment a lot of times, because if we're not at capacity, we allow people to come in and just look around for free. And many people have said, you need to charge to come in and look around. There's so much to see. And I'm like, no, it's okay. It's fun.
Is there a time limit? When you come in and you pay for the admission, are you restricted as to how long you can hang?
No, there's no time limit.
Pretty cool.
So some people will have done it before, you know, come in and stay for 4 hours and then leave and get a bite to eat and come back for 4 more hours on a Saturday. But I've also always said it's kind of like an all-you-can-eat buffet. You know, people don't just stay all day and eat. They'll play for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then they'll take off. And
talk about, TC, if you will, how I got involved in it the first time, in that I was walking by one time and I saw this pinball museum. You know, I walked in and I said to myself, this would be one of the great places to have a party. And it was. And talk a little bit about that process. I assume you have lots of parties there?
Well, that has changed.
Tell me about it.
We don't have parties anymore because
Capacity?
The wear and tear on the machines is key. So our hours are very odd for most people. Like during the week, today's Tuesday, we're closed on Tuesdays. And that's simply to fix machines. We don't open until Wednesday through Fridays, 2 to 9. We only open for 7 hours. Saturdays, noon to 9, Sunday and Mondays, 1 to 6. So we have very limited hours, but that's by design to keep the machines running at, top-notch proficiency. Because if I tried to squeeze a few more hours out of it, we would come in and games would be down. I mean, you can walk in on any day and there might be a game or two down, but that's it. And those games have gone down that very day. I start every day at 100% capacity. 100% games. Yeah.
So talk about so you don't do parties anymore?
Nope.
How come?
It's too much. It's extra because it's a wonderful problem to have. I'm not complaining. But we are full constantly. So this summer, for instance, there was not. So if you say the summer is from Memorial Day to Labor Day, we've averaged over 200 paid patrons per day.
Very exciting.
Every single day. And you're talking even on a day where we're open 5 hours, we'll have
Right.
200 people through the door.
Well,
So this for the staff, and I just don't hire anyone. They have to be of a certain ilk, be able to, talk with you about the games, be courteous, and they are on it. However long the shift is, for 7 hours, they're on. It's almost like being a performer.
and I think, yeah, I was lucky, I think, though, because I came in the first year, so just you're building up the business,
Right.
And it was a great thing. But talk a little bit then about two things you alluded to. One, in terms of your staff. How many people have working there? About.
Right now, well, we actually do have another location in Hendersonville, the Appalachian Pinball Museum. A lot of people aren't familiar with that. That's this fall will be 4 years. So over there, that's where my technician, who's gotten to quit his day job so he can run that and be technicians for both places. So over there's about 5 full-time staff. At our place, we have about 7 full-time and then 3 or 4 part-time people.
Now, do you have to be a good pinball player to work at your place?
No, and you don't. There are some better than others, but no, you just have to be courteous and pay attention and realize when you first start, like almost any job, there's so many details and things you got to learn. But no, that is not a prerequisite.
So that's not part of the test. They don't have to come in and get 87,000 points on a game.
No, that would be a little harsh. And they, but most of them, almost every one of my employees will, on a day off, from time to time, come in and play. Yeah, just that's because they can come in for free, and they'll just come in and hang out because we have a good, whenever we try out someone. And it's always considered a tryout. I immediately go through the staff and ask what everybody thinks. And there's been a few times where like, all right, I won't hire them. And then, but most of the time through the process, my wife and I will interview together because she's part owner as well.
Has it been tough hiring people?
Well, there's been times lately where we've had to be like, all right, this will do for staff, but I would never hire someone just to be a body there. I'm, being a school teacher and being asked to do extra stuff a lot of times and not get paid for it. So I'm very sensitive to that. So it's very rare that I will call an employee in on their day off to work. I treat my staff really well. Usually when we lose a staff member, it's because they're moving or maybe they got married and the spouse wants to, is somewhere else. But it hasn't been that tough, but we also haven't had, this year, we've definitely had fewer applications. Usually it's like every other week, someone would walk through the door with a resume, and this past year, it's maybe been 1 a month.
The one thing I would imagine working at your place is it seems like it's a fun place to work at, so if anyone comes in to want to work, it's kind of nice that people are coming in, they want to have a good time, so that I would imagine most people are in a pretty good mood when they even come into the door. Is that what happens?
Yes. Yeah, that is why my first manager, it was so much fun after the first year to actually hire someone to do some of the work. I brag about how in the second month we turned a profit of the business, but that's because I wasn't paying anyone. I wasn't paying myself either. But so technically we work. But yeah, it's my first manager. He would comment. He's like, you're here all the time, and I'm like, yeah. And he's like, why are you here all the time? It's like, because I like being here. I've made a place that I enjoy being. But I limit myself. Like this morning, even though it's the day off, we did have beer delivery this morning. That takes about 20 minutes, but I was there for 2.5 hours, just tweaking a couple little things and making sure everything's right. And I'm always looking to improve the place, whether it's a new lamp I saw or a poster or some kind of memorabilia, always.
Tough question. A choice between being a teacher or running a pinball museum.
A lot of people assume, and they will come up to me and say, I bet you don't miss teaching. And that is not true. I miss teaching a lot. I enjoyed teaching. I did do it a little different than most, but I had a very good rapport with the students. In fact, over the years, I've had several of my former students work for me.
Oh, cool.
Currently, I have one former student, and she was actually in the class. I was teaching 8th grade that spring when I got the idea, and I was sharing with the class my idea. And she has told me that everyone looked around like, there's no way, that's a terrible idea, which almost everyone did the same thing. They'd be like, well, good luck with that. But I've always been like, if it's something I think I would really like, I think a lot of other people would like it too. So,
well, just, the minute I heard the idea, I had said, not only is it perfect for Asheville, but just what a great idea it was, and just, so I'm so glad it's worked out well for you on the 8 years. How often do you get new pinball machines?
Pre-COVID, that was a huge thing to continue to upgrade. Right now, we've been putting all our nuts stashed away in the tree to just in case something happens. I'm a little worried, of course, about this winter. If a good deal comes along right now, sure, I'll still jump on it. Excuse me. But yeah, when we get back to a normal situation, we usually add in a machine a month, move something on, and then try to. And it's not always a new machine. We try to have vintage machines. That's kind of the key, is to have make sure that it stays a museum. I mean, we don't have really any 60s machines to play. They really won't hold up. But the 70s machines, the 80s machines, the 90s machines, you can keep them running. And we always have those represented on the floor. And what's really neat about the newer machines, because a lot of people are surprised, they're still making new pinball machines. But a lot of the newer machines have older themes. So a couple years ago, they came out with a Ghostbusters machine based on the original first 2 movies. We have a Batman machine that's based on the Adam West television series. But it's a brand new fancy machine. One of our fanciest machines is Willy Wonka, and based on the Gene Wilder movie. But it is all new tech, beautiful, fun to play. Yeah.
Talk about the impact of COVID on the business.
Well, first, you're talking shut down, by the powers that be, the government, the state. So that was March through the beginning of September of 2020. And then my wife actually contracted COVID last fall in November, and it was pretty serious. And that's when everything started to spike. And I knew, and we were about 2 weeks away from Thanksgiving, which for us is an insane time. There will be, I don't know if it'll happen this Thanksgiving, but in past Thanksgivings, we've had 200 people standing outside our door, lined up, waiting to get in for the 70 spots we had open.
And so by the way, what do you do when that happens? So people come and there's a line. Do they stay in line then, or what happens?
No, what we do is we go out and make a big announcement, and I kind of point in a general direction and say, about right here is where the cutoff is.
Right.
We will get your name, phone number.
Cool.
You don't have to hang around. We will give you a call or a text when space is available. But those of you at the end of the line, it's going to be a while. and I try to, I put this on the website, on the voicemail. People will save us for a rainy day. We get articles written about us about the best thing to do on a rainy day. And I'm like, oh boy, I don't, and like, if you're saving us for a rainy day, so is everyone else. So don't do that. Especially locals, when locals will come by in the summertime and we're on a 2-hour wait, I just say, hey, come back in the fall during the week.
Right.
You can walk in and you'll be able to play. But that's how that works. But yeah, with COVID, so 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I just made an executive decision and shut us down. We did not have to shut down, but I saw what was happening. My staff is very sensitive to that as well. They're paying attention. And I just got everyone together and said, this is what we're doing. When it gets better, we'll open back up. So we voluntarily shut down mid-November until mid-February or the end of February. And we did have a disaster relief loan to help us out with that. And I actually talked with Mike Rangel, who runs Asheville Brewery and the movie theater, and Asheville Pizza, and Rabbit. He does everything. But we've been good friends for 20 years, and I talked to him about it, and he was like, "Hey, if you can afford to do it, do it."
So now you're back open, full scale, and are there any requirements to getting into the place?
We've never gone back to full scale since we reopened. Our fire code capacity is 99.
Right.
And I've always had the attitude that however we would never have more players in than we had games. So the most
Right.
games we've ever had is like 82 games. But after COVID happened and has never gone away, right? I mean, so what we did was we kind of spread games out, took some games off the floor, and so we reduced our capacity to 70. And that's where we were for most of the summer. With this latest spike, we have reduced our capacity again to 60. It's not something we really talk about. There's no big, we just go, hey, this is how many people we allow in, and this is what we do. As far as we're not doing vaccination cards, I mean, if that becomes a requirement by
Right.
the government, okay. But I don't feel that's my responsibility to
Sure.
start getting into that. We do require masks. The very next day after the CDC said masks should be worn, I initiated that, and we have not wavered. When I do my little speech outside, part of the speech is, hey, if you don't want to wear a mask, I'm sorry, but you're just not allowed in here. And that's how it is.
Moving forward, what are your plans, TC, moving forward?
Just keep making it the best place I can make it. I've actually opened up another business in the basement below it that is also, well, unlike the Pinball Museum where it had somewhat been done, this is called the Amazing Poster Vault. It's filled with movie posters and all sorts of different posters. There's different rooms, different artists. There's a Star Wars room. There's an Oscars room. People can walk through, and if they want to, they can purchase the posters that are on the wall. And it's been open since June, and it's doing well. It's in the black, and it's pretty neat. It's a lot of fun. And I added the Asheville now has a Lunchbox Hall of Fame, which nobody knows about because it's only been open a month, and we don't advertise. So
Well, remind me too, that'll be another show, okay, next time.
Oh, yeah,
And,
yeah,
and we'll actually have you there, kind of walking through, or maybe I'll come down and see it.
Yeah, cool.
TC, if folks want to get more information about the Asheville Pinball Museum, what's the best bet?
You can go to our Facebook page, just Google Asheville Pinball Museum. Got a lot of information there, and we do have a website, AshevillePinball.com. Just look online. I tell people, Google it, go to images, and that's all you need to see.
Okay. I'd like, thank you for being my guest the second half hour on the BLAINESWORLD show. I'd also like to thank my guests the first half hour, Mike Gow, Fred Northup, and Drew Banzhoff. You've been listening to the BLAINESWORLD show, heard Wednesdays here on WPBM FM. Also, I thank Amy, national producer, and we hope to see you next week. And if you would just say here a second as I want to sign off, TC, but I want to sign off and you and I will finish up. So thanks for being my guest. Speak to you soon.